welcome to Tuesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And it's Tuesday, which means it's Witness Day for me this evening. 10 o'clock tonight UK time, so about an hour and a half after this video hopefully comes out. I say hopefully because I might not be able to solve the puzzle, but if I can solve the puzzle, an hour and a half after that, I'll be live streaming my latest attempt. I think it's my 5th episode of trying to combat this computer game, The Witness, which I'm really enjoying and I'm very much looking forward to. So do join me if you've any interest in any of those sorts of things. Now, what have we got for you on the Sudoku side today? Well, you can see this puzzle on screen, which is by the author Mikey, and it's called Arrow Squaring. And I think that must be because these arrows down here all look like they've been made into sort of square shapes. Now, Mikey only submitted this recently, and I sent it off to one of our testers, and it's come back very quickly with an absolutely glowing recommendation. So this should be brilliant, and I'm looking forward to trying it. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I've mentioned Witness, didn't I? I wanted to mention, yes, tomorrow, it's the 1st of September. So if you're a patron of the channel, and why wouldn't you be? About 5,500 of your fellow human beings are patrons of the channel, and they do a fantastic job in helping us to keep the channel going. It's a couple of bucks a month, and yeah, and as I say, tomorrow we're going to be releasing the Looney Tunes Sudoku hunt for everyone who's a patron over there. So do look out for that. They should be a lot of fun in more ways than one. And once you've finished it, send in your answer to crackingthecryptic@gmail.com, and you'll be in with a chance of winning some merchandise. So I definitely recommend you have a go. And with all that said, let's get on with arrow squaring, and I'll read you the rules. I get a given digit today. This is great. Normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage. Nothing about digits not... Oh, I see. And digits obviously can't repeat in these cages because there are only 4 of them, and they are all each individually either in a complete column or a complete row of the Sudoku. So we don't need a rule about digits not repeating because they just can't repeat because of Sudoku rules. Digits along an arrow must sum to the digit in that arrow's circle. So we've got all of these arrows in the grid. Let's just take a look at, let's look at this one. What this rule is saying is that we add this cell to this cell. Let's say that's a 2 and that's a 4. I was trying to type 3 there, but I managed to type 4. Doesn't matter. 2 plus 4 is 6, so we'd put 6 in the circle. So that's how arrows work. Very simple. And with that, do have a go. The way to play, as always, is to click the link under the video. So just go down to the video description. You'll see a link. Launch that link in whatever device takes your fancy, and you should reach a page that looks identical to this one. And then have a go. And well, anyway, now I get to have a go. Let's get cracking. Now, a quick review of the cage totals is not revealing much to me. Each of these individually, I don't think I can do much with. I mean, I know things like a 19 cage has got to have an 8 or a 9 or both in it because it can't be made up of digits below that. 7, 6 and 5 only add up to 18. So it looks like we're going to have to start with the arrows. And I have to say, I'm a bit tempted by some sort of set relationship straight off the bat here. These look like they're very, very deliberately placed. Here, right, okay, here's a silly deduction straight off the bat, which might be nonsense. Well, it's not, I don't think it's nonsense as a point, but it might not be what we're meant to note. But one thing I can say is that at least one of these arrows now is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. And that's because if each of these arrows in these 2 rows had a 1 on it, then you couldn't put a 1 in row 4 anywhere. So if there's 1s along each of these arrows, now you can't put a 1 in row 4, so that can't be true. And once you know that at least one of the arrows doesn't have a 1 on it, then the only way of making the arrow add up to a single digit number will be with the digits 2, 3 and 4. So one of these arrows at least in these rows, and actually it's going to work the same down here, isn't it? You can't have 1s on all of those arrows for exactly the same reason regarding row 7. So I don't really know how we use that straight away, but that is an interesting thing to note. Right, the other thing I'm just wondering about is I've got an awful lot of arrow cells in that row, look, and 1, 2, 3, 4 in row 6 as well. So let's check what the... Actually, this might not work because I'm just noticing the circles here are not in the same row. So we don't have a syzygy of circles. We have a sort of arc of circles, a curve going right around like that. But let's just do the maths on this. So the minimum these highlighted cells could be would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is 15. And the minimum those 4 could be in row 6 would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 10. So 25. So these 3 circles add up to 25, which means that they must contain a repeated digit. Because if they didn't, the maximum they could add up to would be 9, 8, and 7, which is only 24. Yeah, and the logic actually, I was just thinking about whether the logic is the same down there, and it is identical, look. We've got a non-syzygy of circles, but we have got 5 arrow cells in row 8 and 4 in row 9, so these also add up to at least 25. So if we went... Right, okay, so there's... Well, actually, we know there's a... I already knew there was a 9 on there. I was just adding 887. I'm convincing myself there must be a 9. But we already knew there was a 9 because of the point around the fact that each arrow individually can't have a 1 on it. And obviously, if you make any of these arrows individually a 6, 7, or an 8 arrow, they will have to have a 1 on because the combinations for 6 are 1, 2, 3. The combination for 7 is 1, 2, 4. The combinations for 8 are either 1, 2, 5 or 1, 3, 4. All of those combinations all had a 1. So if you have a 9, then the other 2 cells have to add up to at least 16. Well, that's interesting, actually. This is already a very cool puzzle. I love puzzles like this because there's these geometric considerations as well as a little bit of maths. So what I'm just thinking here is that there aren't many ways that this works, full stop, to be honest. You can't have 3 9s. That doesn't work because those 2 can't be 9s. You could have 998, I think, and 998 is 26, which is 1 above the minimum. Or you've got to have 25, which is either going to be 997 or 988. But the interesting thing, or one interesting thing about that, is if we consider these as a set, we now know that they're definitely selected from the digits 7, 8, and 9. But we also know that it's not possible for that. Well, it's not possible for neither of those squares to be a 9. Because if neither of those squares was a 9 and we just made this one a 9, these 2 would have to add up to 16 without using a 9. And the only way of doing that would be 88. So we know that there's a 9 in one of those 2 cells. Aha, yeah. This is really clever. Right, there is a 9 in one of those 2 cells. And there might also be a 9 here. And there's also not a 7 in this one, because if that was a 7, these 2 would have to add up to at least 18, and you can't double 9 them because they're in the same row of the Sudoku. So this is an 8 or a 9. There's definitely a 9 in one of those 2 squares, and what I'm noticing straight away, look, is if we look, we do have a sort of, well, it's a syzygy of 2 planets, because the same logic, it must be identical in these three planets here. This one is going to have to be an 8 or a 9, because if it's a 7 you have to double 9 those. And one of these 2 must be a 9, because if they're not, you've got the only way of getting to 25 is 889, and those would have to be 88, and that doesn't work either. So there you go. That is an X-wing on 9s, and that's going to do something to these cages, I think, straight off the bat. So let's just think about this. We now know there's definitely a 9 in exactly one of those 2 and a 9 in exactly one of those 2. So the effect this has is on the columns. And if you're not familiar with X-wings, And a lot of people aren't, and we do pick up subscribers all the time, and they're like, what are X-wings? Well, let's explain. This pattern of the fact that there's got to be a 9 in one of those two and one of those two means that the 9s will be arranged in these purple cells on the diagonal. So in the finished solution, you'll either have a 9 here, and obviously if there's a 9 here, you can't have a 9 there, which means the 9 in row 9's there. So you either have this limb of an X as being 9s, or you have that limb of an X being 9s. Now either way, you'll have noticed that exactly one of those two cells was a 9, and exactly one of those two cells was a 9. I have no idea which part of my speech there corresponded to the word Alexa, but she wants to get in on the act. So there's a 9 in one of those two, so there are no 9s in any of those cells. There's a 9 in one of those two, so there are no 9s in any of those cells. So if there's no 9, right, that means there's an 8 in this 19 cage, for certain, because we know that 5, 6 and 7 only add up to 18. Ah, now that means there's no 8 here. Oh, right, no, this is better than that. Right, that's a 7, 8, 9 for exactly the same reasons. We've worked out that all of these digits had to be at least equal to 7, and now those two can't be 8. They're a 7, 9 pair. Now, can we do... Does that force this then? Yes, it does. So this triple here now has to be 8, and then two digits that add up to 11 that don't use a 9, 8 or a 7, so that's 5 and 6. And I'm instantly interested now in this column actually, because now I've got 5s, 6s and 8s to place in this column, and I can never put 8 on an arrow, or not on a 3-cell arrow anyway, so there's an 8 in one of those two cells, which I will highlight in green. And there's a 5, well, okay, one of these arrows is a 7, which is a 1, 2, 4 arrow, so that can't have a 5 or a 6 on it. So what, these squares have got to be 5, 6 or 8, with one of them being an 8, and then whichever one of these is a 9 will have a 5 or a 6 on it. Okay, well, what that means is that both of these arrows have 1s on them. And the reason for that, of course, is that whichever one is a 7 is a 1, 2, 4, and whichever one is a 9 is either a 1, 3, 5 or a 1, 2, 6, depending on whether it has a 5 or a 6 on it. That means that there's no 1s in those 6 cells, which means there's a 1 actually in one of those 2 cells, because of our given 1 playing its role at an early stage. Okay, so what does that mean? The answer is I don't know. Oh, no, that could still be 5, 8, look, because that could still be a 6, and that would make that an 8. Okay. So, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm wondering whether I need to check this one now as well. Because this one also, because of the X-wing on 9s, can't have an 8, can't have a 9 in it. But this one could just have, this one could just be 5, 6, 7. And if it has got an 8 in it, the other two digits add up to 10. Without using 9, without using 8. Oh, okay, and what you couldn't do here, that's actually quite interesting. Let's look at that. This cannot be 3, 7, 8, because then both of those squares would have to equal 9, which doesn't work. So there aren't that many options for this. This is either 8, 4, 6, or it's 7, 6, 5. Oh, that's no good. 7, 6, 5. So these are properly good lift cages now. There's definitely a 6 up here. Because both of those two options had 6 in. But unfortunately, that seems to be a lot of... There's a lot of possible numbers in that triple. Okay. So, what on earth do we look at now? One of these is a 7. So we know whichever one of these is 7, because they're circles in the sort of just offset syzygy, have to add up to at least 25. The other 2 digits are going to be double 9. So one of these syzygies is 7 in the middle with double 9 in the wings. And that means what, therefore? I've not got a clue. I'm really sorry, I don't know. What on earth do I do now? So, if one of these is a 7, is it possible that this is a 7-9 pair as well, or is that just not possible? Yeah, that wouldn't be a deadly pattern, because each of these 7-9, if I do that, whoops, I mean, whoa, hang on, let me go back. If I get rid of 8s from those 2 squares, this is not a deadly pattern, because these 7s and 9s are in 4 different boxes of the Sudoku. So that would not be deadly. And then 7, 7. So if that was 7, you could, no, it would. I think that might work. Okay, that was not a sensible thought. So is there some restriction? I'm not quite understanding this. I don't think... I don't know what to do. Do we know anything about these cells here? That is the question. I know in each triple there is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. But I don't think I know which one it is. But I know that there are at least 2, because there's at least one in this row, and there's at least one in this row. So, does that matter? Oh, well, that's a little bit interesting, look. You can't have both of those being 2, 3, 4, 9 arrows, because then those cells wouldn't work. If this was a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, and this was a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, then these 4 cells in column 2 would be selected from just 3 different numbers. That's not going to work. So, how did I work out? I've lost track of my thinking here. How am I sure that there are 1s on both of those arrows? Was that a sensible deduction? Or is that just me messing about? One of them is definitely a 1, 2, 4. I'm losing my marbles here. One of them is definitely a 1, 2, 4. I can see that. But why is the other one? Why does the other one have to have a 1 on it? It looks like I have done that because I put it up there. And now I'm doubting whether or not I'm wondering whether I'm going crazy. Oh, I know why. It's because there has to be a 5 or a 6. I haven't got a very good way of pencil marking that, so that is correct. Okay. So maybe what we've got to do... So neither of those is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. So, and we know that it's not possible that both of those is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. So, okay, so can we ask the question, is it possible that both of these are 2, 3, 4, 9 arrows? is that going to break anything? Oh yeah, that obviously breaks. That breaks for the very simple reason. If both of these are 2, 3, 4, 9 arrows, those are both 9. So hang on. You can't put 2, 3, 4 in both of those ones. That's not going to work. And you can't put 2, 3, 4 in both of those ones because that doesn't work. So there must be 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow in these 6 cells and 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow in those 6 cells. Because it's not possible to either put 2 or 0 in either of the 6 cells individually. So there is exactly one of these is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. Which means exactly one of these has a 1 on its arrow. That's because once it's not a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, the only other 3 cell, all of the other 3 cell arrow combinations have 1 on them. But how on earth do we tell which way round that? Which one of these has the 1 on it? Because whichever one has the 1 on it, that's going to shift a 1 into one of those sets of digits, which if it was this one, would place a 1 here, because you couldn't put 1 in the 13 cage, and you couldn't put 1 there because of this given one. So there looks like there might be a way of deducing that. Which one of these? Oh, no. Hang on a moment. Maybe I've got to use that. Hang on. I think I've missed something here. I've overlooked a deduction, haven't I? Because oh no, maybe I haven't. Hang on. At least one of these is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. So it has a 4 on it. So if we had a 7 in one of these squares, then that would have a 4 on it as well. But we don't have to have a 4 here, do we? No. This is still good. This is an interesting point. The options for this triple were either 4, 6, 8 or 5, 6, 7. Well, 4, 6, 8 won't work, will it? No, it won't. Whoa, this is very cool. Right, let's imagine this is a 4, 6, 8 triple. In fact, let's just put it in. If it's a 4, 6, 8 triple, these two squares are a 7, 9 pair. Now, why is this problematic? Well, it's problematic because the 7 arrow, let's just say it's this one, it won't matter. This is a 1, 2, 4 arrow. The 9 arrow we know is a 2, 3, 4 arrow because we know one of these had to be a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow because you can't put 2, 2, 3, 4, 9 arrows over there. Now, what's the problem here? Well, one of those two squares has to be a 4 because of the 4, 6, 8 triple, and one of these two squares has to be a 4 because of the 4, 6, 8 triple, and you can't put 2 4s in column 8 however much you might want to. This does not work. That's not easy. That is not easy, but it is incredibly beautiful. And that means that that is a 5, 6, 7 triple, which means we can get rid of 7 from here. So now, now, one of these is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, and one of these is an 8 arrow, which has a 1 on it. And I don't actually think we know whether it's a 1, 3, 4 or a 1, 2, 5. Bobbins. Okay. So what does that do exactly? Does it do anything? If this is 5, 6, 7, do we have the same issue with 5, 6, 7 in this column? Maybe that's the point. This is really brilliant, this puzzle, by the way. It is really brilliant. Yes, okay. Where do 5, 6, 7 go in column 8? The answer is 2 of them have to go in those squares. And the reason for that, in fact, and 7 definitely has to go in one of those 2 squares. So those 2 squares have to share a 7. And the reason for that is I can't put 7 on an arrow. That's just simply impossible. Now I can put 1 of 6 and 5 on an arrow, but we know it can't go on the 9 arrow, which is a 2, 3, 4 arrow. So the 8 arrow must take the 5, which means this has become, this is ridiculous. This has become a 6, 7 pair. There is a 5 in one of these 4 squares, and it's on a 1, 2, 5, 8 arrow. Okay. Oh, that's not 6, 7 now. Oh, but it could still be 5, 8, you know. That could still be 5, 8. That would be a 6, that would be a 7, and that would work. Ah! Is this little domino the key to this puzzle? That is the thing I'm now thinking about. I don't know. Oh dear. Okay, so let us now rethink what we know about the world. One of these over here is 1, 2, 5. One of them is 2, 3, 4. So 3 must be in one of those cells because each of these individually has a 3 on it. And actually, and a 2. 1, 2, what? Hang on, I'm going mad. I'm going absolutely doolally. 1, 2, 5 has a 2 on it, not a 3. What are you talking about, Simon? I'm going crazy. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 5. They definitely share 2, not 3. Okay. So, whichever one of these. So one of these is 7, 9, 9. 7, 9, 9. And one of these is going to be 9, 8. And that's already 17, which means that could be an 8 or a 9. So there must be a way, I think. If we look at what we've done, we managed to limit this. Now we've managed to limit that. I think there must be a way of limiting this somehow. I don't, unfortunately, know what that way is. What on earth do I do now? 9s are not in those positions, are they? Sorry about this, I'm stuck. I'm well and truly stuck. I've got a feeling it's going to be something to do with counting the number of low digits on these arrows. But I can't quite see how to do that. Do we know? Is there something going on? One of these arrows is 1, 2, 4. So that will marry up with the 2 in the other, because there's 2s on both of those arrows, and that will point a 2 in one of these, which will, I don't think that has a massive effect on these cells here, unless I'm missing something, which I could well be. One of these arrows definitely has a 1 on it because it's an 8 arrow. Oh no, that's not true. Sorry, I've got 8, 9 penciled into these, but they don't actually. No, they could both be 9, couldn't they? Oh, bobbins. One of them's a 2, 3, 4 arrow. Whichever one is a 2, 3, 4 arrow, it can't see another 2, 3, 4. It can't see its friend in box 6 or 9, because then you'd have to put 2, 3, and 4 into those squares, and you can't. Or similarly, 2, 3, 4 into those squares. So the 2, 3, 4 arrows form a sort of X-wing pattern as well, but it's a triple X-wing pattern on 2s, 3s, and 4s. So if that was 2, 3, and 4, that would have to be 2, 3, and 4, and that would be 9, and that would be 9, and that would be 8. 9 plus 8 means that square would have to be a 9. Oh, so maybe I can get a grip on what the... Is that the point? Can I get a grip on what these numbers are? Ah, right. Right, let's think about that. So one of these is 2, 3, 4. Don't know which one. Let's just say it's this one. Now we know that's 2, 3, 4 because we can't align the 2, 3, 4s in the same 2 rows of the grid. Let's just remind ourselves why that is. If this is 2, 3, 4, you can't put 2, 3, 4 here. Yet we know one of these is 2, 3, 4, because if you put 2, 3, 4 there, that has to be a 2, 3, 4 triple, and it can't be. So, if this is 2, 3, 4, that is 2, 3, 4. In other words, this is a 9. This is a 9. Now this becomes an 8. Now once this is an 8, this square can't be a 7, can it? Because 9 plus 8 plus 7 is only 24. So this would have to be a 9, which means that's a 7, which forces double 9 there and there. And that logic is good whichever way round we go. Because if we do 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 here, so this is a 9 and this is a 9. Now this becomes an 8 and we can't put 7 in there. So that has to be double 9 and that has to be 9 and that has to be 9 in order to make that work. Let's just double check what I just said there. If that's 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, these are both 9. These are both 9. So 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. This becomes a 7, which forces this to be a 9, because otherwise it doesn't add up to 25. Therefore, they get a 9 here, a 9 here, and an 8 here to go along with it. So the point is, those can't be 8s. Sorry, that's taken me a long time, but it wasn't. I don't think it was completely obvious, was it? At least it certainly wasn't to me. Now I get a 9 in the 17 cage, which was not what I was expecting. Oh, good grief. This puzzle is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Now look at this column and ask where 8 goes, because it definitely doesn't go in the 17 cage because we can't put 8 and 0 along with the 9. 8 can never go on a 3-cell arrow, so 8 goes in those squares and they become... That's an X-wing on 8s we've got going on now. Does that do anything? I'm not actually sure it does. Oh, yes, it does. It does. The 13 cage is the key. This is the king cage. Because, of course, once you've got 8 limited in the columns into one of these 2 cells and one of these 2 cells, the effect it has is on the rows. We can't now put 8s in any of these squares for exactly the same reason we ran through with 9s earlier. So now, this little cage here, it can't be a 6-7 cage and it can't have an 8 in it. That's 4, 9, and we've got a 9 there. There we go, 9, 4. Oh, this is lovely. Now it's going to unwind this. 7, 9, 8, 9. Which means there's a 9 over here. Now, is this going to break the puzzle open for us? That is the next question. The answer to that is I don't know yet. But I've got a 4 here. So this is not a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, but one of these 2 must be. So it must be that one. So this is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow. And this is a 9 arrow that is definitely not 2, 3, 4, because then those 4 squares would have to be selected from 3 digits. So this has a 1 on it, which means... Yes, which means that there's a 1 in one of those 2 squares, and this is a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow, because we know that the 2, 3, 4s form a sort of weird triplicate X-wing. Now, this is an 8 arrow with a 2 on it, apparently. Oh, and I think that was good logic, wasn't it? Because I think I worked out there was a 2 on both possibilities for these 2 arrow cells. So that is a 1, 2, 5. 1 has to be in exactly one of those 2 cells in this box here, because it can't be there because of the given 1. In fact, that can't be a 1 either. This is not a 5. Okay. This 7 arrow, we know that's going to be 1, 2 and 4. Let's fill that in. There's definitely a 2 now in one of these 2 cells. So this 9 arrow is a 1, 3, 5, 9 arrow. This is seriously clever, isn't it? My goodness me. Right, now where does 3 go? In row 7, only there. Which means that... Oh, I'll tell you one thing that's an interesting thought. Where does 2 go in row 6? Because of these alignments, it goes in one of those 2 cells. Now, why is that interesting? Well, that 9 arrow has a 1 on it, and now has to be 1, 2... It can't be 1, 2, 6, it's 1, 3, 5. And that's not a... Ah, this is a naked single. Now, it's a 1, because it sees 5 and it sees 3. So this is a 3, 5 pair. That means that's not a 5. And that's not a 5. These have become a 6, 8 pair now, which gives us an X-wing on 6s. Whoa, 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 whoa. So there's no 6s in any of these squares. That means 6... Yeah, so that's interesting at least, because now 6 in box 4 has to be in that domino. 6 in box 7 has to be in that domino. 6 is forced into the 17 cage, which is now forced. It's got a 9, it's got a 6, so it must also have a 2 in it. That is beautiful. That gives me the 2 here. That gives me a 3, 4 pair here. That locks a 3 into the corner. That's 3 in the corner. That's 3 in the spotlight, losing its religion. We always like to see a 3 in the corner on cracking the cryptic. And now I've got... now I've got a 7, 8 pair. So now I've got an X-wing on 7s as well. Good grief. So I've now got X-wings on 6s, X-wings on 8s, X-wings on 7s now, and I did have X-wings on 9s. So the 7s X-wing is those squares, look. I'm going to colour them in a different colour so that it becomes clear where all of these X-wings are. So that red is the X-wing on 6s, blue is the X-wing on 7s, and green is the X-wing on 8s, purple is the X-wing on 9s. That's 4 X-wings so far, not bad. Now, what does that mean? Oh, I see, 1 has been shunted over into this cell in just the only place 1 can go in box 4. Now, that's not a 1 anymore. I wonder whether this sort of... the 1, that has to be a 1, so that's a 2 and that's a 5. This square's no longer a 2. Yeah, I sort of interrupted my train of thought there. I was wondering whether the puzzle might get a little bit easier now. I shouldn't have said that. It's crazy talk. But are you going to give up your secrets now? If we look along this row, you can see those 2 squares have to be a 1, 5 pair. The only place 1s and 5s can go, and there's a 5 already in that column. So I think that's a 5 and that's a 1. And that means 1 joins its friends up here, look, in box number 3. And now this square must be a 2. It's the only digit left. 2, 6, 9. So these squares here are from 5, 6 and 8. Which is disappointing. And these squares are from 6, 7 and 8. That's not 7, I suppose, using the 7 we've got there. Okay, bobbins, that's also not enough. These are from 6, 7, 8 as well. That's not 7 either. Oh, I see. So this is the only place... Oh no, that's not right. 6, 8 seems to give me a 5 here. I don't quite understand that. Let me just think. Is that wrong, or is that just a consequence of all the eliminations we've done? It seems to be. 5, 6 and 8 into those. Okay, well, I'll take it. That's a 5. That's a 5 and that's a 1. Which means this is a 1. which almost looks interesting, but not quite. So I'm left with some pairs along the bottom row. I'm left with some triples in row 8, 2, 3, 4 triple and a 5, 6, 8 triple. And, okay, well maybe we can work some more magic. Perhaps 3, I'm wondering about now, in this box. It's got to be in one of those two positions, because it's locked into that pair and that pair. Ah, in fact the 5 here might do some damage. 5, 3, 3, 4. Or not. What about this row then? We've got an awful lot done there. We need 6s, 7s and 8s into those 3 squares. Ah, that's interesting, look. So we've now got a 6, 7, 8 triple in column 7 that's appeared out of nowhere. So I'm instantly interested in, well, cells like this. What's that going to be? That's got to be 4, 6 or 7, so that's a naked single. That's a 4. So now this square is a 3, 6. That square's got to be a 3, doesn't it? Because it can't be 6, 7 or 8 because of the triple here. So that becomes a 3. Oh no, hang on, I've just noticed I've got 8 here, so I'm now worried that I've just made a mess of that. Hang on. 6, 7, 8 triple here, that can't be an 8. So there's definitely an 8 down there. So let's actually just, oh, we've got a 6, 7 pair here. Ah, it's all kicking off. So these are 3s, 4s and 9s. And that one, as that one was a 4, sorry, I was just being a bit slow. But that one I think I labelled as a 3, and that doesn't look like it's a 3 now. So maybe it was sensible to just take a pause. This 9 here is seeing that square, so that's a 3, that's a 9. That's a 4, that's a 2, and that's a 3. And that's a 4, and that's a 2, and that's a 4. And so now in this row, look, we've just got to place 2s and 5s. So that's a 2 and that's a 5. And now this square is a 6 or a 7. And this square is also a 6 or a 7. Now we've got a 6, 7, 8 triple in column 4, which means those squares are now 1, 3 and 4, I think. That's not a 1. So maybe this arrow is where we're going to get some joy. What about these squares at the top of column 6? They've got to be 2, 7 and 9. You can't put 2 in an arrow because you can't double 1 that arrow. So this is a 7 or a 9. Right, now I'm going to look at this column because I can see that I'm also going to know what those squares are. They're 4, 8 or 9, and you can never put 9 at the end of the arrow. So if this is 8, that has to be 1, and that has to be 9. If this is 4, this can't be 5, actually, because of that 5. So if this is 4, this has to be adding up to 7, and this has to be a 3. But rather annoyingly, I think that might work either way round. So it's either 6, 3, 4, or 9, 1, 8. Right, okay. So, oh, I see, those are 1, 2 and 3 as well, which I hadn't appreciated. So is it this arrow that's going to tell us its secrets? What are the options for these 3 squares? I think that's what we're going to have to look at. 3s, 5s. It's not 6 because 6 is already in the box. So it's 3, 5, 7 or 8. Now, can that be 3? No, because this square is already too big. Can it be 5? No, actually it can't be 5 because this square is a minimum of 3 and 3 plus 3 is a minimum of 6. So that is 7 or 8, which means that's not 8 or 7 because that's going to take it too high once we add 3 to it. So if this is 7... That's got to be 3 or 4. Oh, it can't be 4. So if it's 7, this goes 3, 4. If it's 8, it's 3, 5. So there's a 3 in one of those. There's a 3 in one of those two cells for certain. Whether this is 7 or 8, you put a 3 in one of those two cells. So that's not a 3, and that's not a 3. And that does nothing. Oh, no, now I've got a quadruple in this column. Oh, no, the sensible question to ask... Oh, I see what's happened here. This is clever as well. Because there's a 3 in one of those squares, and you can't put a 3 here, there's actually only one more cell left in column 3 for a 3, and it's there. That has to be 3. And now this can't add up to 8, so it must be a 4 here, which means that's a 7. Maybe we're on to something here. So that's got to be a 1. That's got to be a 3. That's become a 1. And we know that, this is lovely. 8 must go here. 9 must go here. 2 goes here. 7 goes here. 7 goes here, just eliminating digits. Whoa. I want to just get rid of a 1 from there. Now this 3 is telling me that's a 3 and that's a 2. So now that's a 2 and that's a 9 and that's a 6. Which means this square is now a 5. And this square can no longer be 7s. That's a 6, 8 pair. So that's a 7. That's an 8. That's an 8. That's a 6. That's a 6. That's a 7. That's all 3 X-wings just unwound. That's a 7. That's an 8. That's a 6. That's a 7. Keep going, keep going. That's a 6, 6, 8. That's a 7. And that should be an 8. Right, we can eliminate 8 from these squares. We get a 4, 9 pair, which is resolved. 9 and 4. Come on. It must be done, otherwise I've got deadly patterns. Right, what about those squares then? 4 and 8. Right, they're resolved. Right, and that gets me the 8 and the 6, which gets me the 6 and the 5. And this square is a 5. And that is how to solve. What a brilliant puzzle that is. That is brilliant. We've done a few puzzles over the years where you really have to keep track of low digits and where they're positioned in the grid. And this was another brilliant example. These square arrows did so much work. And I think I was incredibly slow at understanding the implications of these 2s, 3s and 4s. So I very quickly worked out there had to be a 2, 3, 4, 9 arrow in each of these sort of rows of arrows. So there's a 2, 3, 4 in those 3 options, and there was a 2, 3, 4 in those 3 options. But I couldn't quite see my way through to understanding what it meant. But, you know, Mikey has done some extraordinary setting here. It's so clever. The fact that there's an X-wing on 9s, and then later in the solve you get X-wings on 8s, 7s and 6s. It's just beautiful. I mean, the execution is elegance personified. It really is. So I did enjoy it, and I'm going to be fascinated actually to hear whether or not I was inefficient. I have a horrible feeling I may be, but I'll read the comments and judge. But please be kind. And thanks so much for watching. We'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.